You click because you're standing in a golf shop, staring at a driver with a $500 price tag, wondering if it will finally give you back the 20 yards you've lost. Here's what my investigation found. 9 out of 10 of those drivers will not add a single yard to your senior swing. Only 3 actually will, and the reason has almost nothing to do with the shiny head they put on the shelf. I'm not a pro. I'm a guy past 60 who got tired of watching my drives die at 200 yards, while a salesman promised me magic, so I started pulling the thread. I tested, I measured, I read the boring stuff nobody reads. And I found something buried in a scientific study from 1968, commissioned by the Golf Society of Great Britain, that quietly explains the whole thing. It's the last piece of this case, and I'll hand it to you before we're done. The best part? You can test it this weekend with the exact driver already sitting in your garage. No purchase required. So let me start where I started, with the lie I believed for 15 years. I believed a new driver head made the ball go faster. That's the whole pitch, isn't it? New face, new technology, more ball speed, more distance. I bought into it 3 times. 3 drivers in 11 years, each one promising more yards than the last. Then I found the number that stopped me cold. Every driver face sold in America is legally capped. There's a limit on how much the face can flex and spring the ball forward. It's called the coefficient of restitution, and the ceiling is 0.83. That rule was locked in for recreational players back in 2008. The head size limit, 460 cubic centimeters, was set in 2004. Read that again. Since 2008, no driver face can legally launch the ball faster than the driver you might already own. The engine has a governor on it, and every manufacturer is pressed right up against the same wall. So, when a salesman tells you the new face is faster, he's technically not allowed to make it faster than the legal maximum, and drivers hit that maximum more than 15 years ago. I stood in that shop and did the math and felt genuinely stupid. I'd been paying for horsepower that was outlawed before my last 3 purchases. But that raised a bigger question, and this is where the case got interesting. If the face can't legally go faster, then how do those 3 drivers actually add distance for a slower swing? Because they do. I measured it. Something real is happening. It's just not the thing they're selling you. And here's where I have to tell you who benefited from you not knowing this. Because the answer isn't an accident. The golf equipment industry makes most of its money on a simple habit they trained into all of us. The belief that distance lives in the driver head and that you buy a new head every 2 years. That's the whole engine of a multi-billion-dollar business. If you understood that the head barely matters for a senior swing, you'd stop upgrading. So the marketing points a giant spotlight at the one part that's legally frozen, and it hides the 2 parts that actually change your distance. I'm going to show you both of them. And then the free method that beats them both. Let me take you to the first thing that actually moves the needle. Loft. I always thought low loft meant more distance. Every long drive champion on television swings something that looks like a putter face, 8 or 9 degrees, and hammers it 300 yards. So for years I played a 9.5-degree driver because that's what the big hitters used. That was the single dumbest equipment decision of my golfing life. Here's what I learned when I finally sat down with a launch monitor. Loft that low only works if you swing fast enough to compress the ball and generate spin that holds the ball in the air. The average male amateur swings the driver around 93 miles per hour. A lot of us past 60 are down in the mid-70s to low 80s. I clocked myself at 79 on a good day. At 79 miles per hour, a 9.5-degree driver launches the ball too low with too little spin, and the ball falls out of the sky like a wounded duck. It hits the ground early and stops. All that potential distance dumped into the fairway at 190 yards. The fix is almost insultingly simple. More loft. For a swing under about 85 miles per hour, the launch monitor data points to something between 12 and 15 degrees. Higher loft launches the ball higher and adds the spin a slower swing can't create on its own. Higher launch plus proper spin equals more carry, and carry is where seniors lose the most distance. I switched from 9.5 degrees to 12. Same swing. Same day. I picked up almost 14 yards of carry. 14 yards from moving a number I'd been told to keep low. Now this is exactly why some drivers actually work for seniors and most don't. A handful of manufacturers finally started building genuinely high loft driver lines aimed at slower swings. Ping put out a high launch model in their G430 family. Callaway built high loft, lightweight versions of the AI Smoke. Cleveland has run a lighter, higher launching line for years. Those are built to get the ball up. Most of the wall in that shop is still built for a swing you had 30 years ago. So loft is the first real lever. I felt like I'd cracked it. But then I hit a wall of my own, because I put 12 degrees of loft on a heavy tour shaft and my swing speed actually dropped. And that opened the second door, the one almost nobody talks about, the shaft. I always thought the shaft was just the stick that connects your hands to the head. Nobody sells you on the shaft. There's no shaft on the giant poster in the pro shop. And that, I now believe, is exactly the point. Let me explain what I found, because this is the lever that separated the 3 real drivers from the 7 pretenders. Weight. The shaft's weight, and the total weight of the club, controls how fast you can swing it. This sounds obvious until you realize how heavy most stock drivers are. A lot of the drivers marketed to everyone come with shafts weighing 60 to 70 grams, built for a swing that's still strong. For a senior swing, that's like asking you to sprint in work boots. The forgotten fix is a lighter shaft, somewhere in the range of 50 grams, sometimes even 40-something, in a senior flex. When I dropped from a 65-gram stiff shaft to a 50-gram senior flex shaft, my swing speed jumped almost 4 miles per hour with zero extra effort. 4 miles per hour of clubhead speed translates to roughly 8 to 10 yards of carry. Free yards, just from lightening the stick. Here's the history that made me angry. This isn't new knowledge. Lightweight graphite shafts for slower swingers have existed since the 1990s. The technology to fit a senior properly has been sitting on the shelf for 30 years, but there's no glamour in selling a man a lighter, more flexible shaft because it quietly admits you've slowed down. So the industry sells you a faster sounding head instead and leaves the one component that would actually help buried in a fitting cart in the back room. And the 3 drivers that actually add distance for a senior, every one of them either comes standard with a genuinely light shaft or is built on a light, high-launch platform. That's the secret the price tag hides. You're not buying a faster face. You're accidentally buying a lighter, higher-launching club and paying $500 for something a good fitter could build you for a fraction of that. But I know what a lot of you are thinking right now because I thought it too. You're thinking this is too much fuss. Launch monitors, fittings, shaft grams, spin numbers. You just want to hit the ball farther without turning golf into a science project or spending another dollar. So this next part is for you, specifically. This is the section where I put down the technical clipboard and hand you something you can do this Saturday with the driver you already own for free. I'm going to give you 3 adjustments. No purchase, no fitter, no new club, first adjustment. If your driver has an adjustable hosel, and most drivers made in the last decade do, that little wrench that came in the box lets you add loft. Turn it to the highest loft setting it offers. If your driver is set at 10.5 and it has a plus 1.5 setting, use it. You just gave yourself 12 degrees for nothing. Remember, most of us are launching the ball too low. This one turn of a wrench can add carry the very first round you play it. Think about that for a second. You've spent years believing the fix was locked inside a shiny new head, when the real levers were the loft and the shaft all along. If that hit you the way it hit me, then you're going to want the full playbook, not just the pieces I can fit into one video. It's called the Complete Senior Golf System, and it's the version of everything we're uncovering here, laid out in order so you never have to guess again. Inside, Smart Basics hands you the exact driver loft mistake that's quietly costing you distance right now, plus hip and wrist fixes you can put to work this very weekend. Swing Deeper goes further, showing you the shaft flex and loft parameters that actually move the needle for a slower swing and how to get measurably faster after 60. And here's your free test tonight. No purchase, right in your own garage. Grab the driver you already own, find that little wrench in the box, and turn it to its highest loft setting. That one turn is the same loft principle the whole system is built on, and you can feel it your very next round. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. The knowledge in there isn't a trend. It's built from real on-course data for slower senior swings, so it's just as true next year as it is today. Now, let me show you the history behind that lighter shaft, because once you hear it, you're going to be as angry as I was. Second adjustment. Grip down on the club. Choke down about an inch from the top of the grip. I know it feels wrong, like you're giving up power, but here's what actually happens. Most senior drivers are built too long, around 45.5 to 46 inches, and a longer club is harder to hit on the center of the face. And the center of the face is where all your ball speed lives. When you grip down an inch, you effectively shorten the club, you gain control, and you start finding the middle far more often. I gained more distance from center face contact than from almost anything else, and it cost me nothing but an inch of grip. Third adjustment, and this is the big one, the one that leads straight into the final piece of my whole investigation. Tee the ball higher. I mean noticeably higher than you do now, high enough that half the ball sits above the crown of the driver when it's resting on the ground. Sounds like nothing, right? Stay with me, because when I tested this one, my jaw actually dropped. And it connects directly to that 1968 study I promised you at the start. Here's why the high tee works, and why it quietly undoes years of lost yards. When the ball sits low, your instinct is to hit down on it or to catch it right at the bottom of your swing arc. When the ball sits high, you're forced to catch it slightly on the upswing, as the club head is already traveling back up. That upward strike is called a positive attack angle. And a positive attack angle does something no expensive driver head can do for you. It launches the ball higher and reduces spin at the same time, which is the exact recipe a slow swing needs for maximum carry. The numbers on this are almost hard to believe. Launch monitor data shows that moving from hitting down on the ball, a negative attack angle, to hitting up on it, a positive attack angle, can add somewhere between 20 and 40 yards of total distance at the same swing speed. Same speed, same effort. Same club, just a higher tee and an upward strike. I tested it over 3 range sessions. I averaged 191 yards hitting down on a low tee. I averaged 214 hitting up on a high tee. 23 yards from a wooden tee I already had in my pocket. I didn't swing harder. I swung the same and let the strike do the work. So that's your Saturday. Add loft with the wrench. Grip down an inch. Tee it high and clip it on the way up. 3 free changes, and if you're like me, you'll pick up somewhere between 15 and 30 yards without spending a cent. But I promised you the case would close with something buried, and it does. Because I kept asking myself one question that wouldn't let go. Who figured all this out? When did we first learn that hitting up on the ball adds distance? Because if this were truly new, the industry could be forgiven for not telling us. So I went looking for the source. And what I found stopped me cold. Long before launch monitors, long before radar tracking, long before any of these drivers existed, someone measured all of this. And then it was forgotten. In 1968, the Golf Society of Great Britain published a book called The Search for the Perfect Swing. It was written by Alistair Cochrane and John Stobbs, and it was the first serious scientific study of golf ever done. Real scientists, real engineers, high-speed cameras and physics, decades before the technology we brag about today. And buried in that study, from 1968, is the finding that closes my whole case. They proved, with hard measurement, that for a golfer with a slower swing speed, the launch conditions matter more than the swing itself. They showed that a higher launch angle, combined with lower spin, produces more carry for the average player. They demonstrated the value of hitting the ball at or slightly after the bottom of the swing arc, exactly what a high tee forces you to do. They even documented that the center of the club face is where nearly all your ball speed comes from, and that off-center hits bleed distance fast. Everything I painfully rediscovered with a launch monitor and 3 drivers was sitting in a book from 1968. More loft, lighter effort, higher launch, lower spin, hit up, and hit the center. The entire senior distance formula, written down and proven 50-plus years ago, before the marketing machine buried it under a mountain of new head technology. Here's the part that gives me chills. The people who kept this alive weren't the big brands. It was the club fitters, the old teaching pros, The tinkerers in the back of the shop who never stopped reading the real science. They knew. They always knew. The knowledge existed. It was pushed aside because there was no money in it. A few stubborn people kept it alive in fitting bays and dusty books, and now it's yours. So let me tell you what the three drivers that actually add distance have in common now that you understand the case. It was never the face. The face has been frozen since 2008. Those three work because they're built the way that 1968 study said a slow swing club should be built. Higher loft to launch it up, lighter shafts so you can swing them faster, high forgiveness so your off-center hits keep their speed. They accidentally follow the 50-year-old formula, and the other 7 don't. That's the entire difference. That's the whole investigation. And you don't even need to buy one of the three. You need the wrench, an inch of grip, and a higher tee. The most expensive driver in that shop cannot outperform a positive attack angle you can create for free this weekend. If you take one thing from all my digging, let it be this. The distance you think you lost to age was mostly lost to being sold the wrong idea. You didn't need a faster face. You needed a higher launch, a lighter club, and a strike that goes up instead of down. And every bit of that was proven before most of us ever picked up a club. You're the kind of person who suspected all along that the simplest, cheapest answer was being hidden behind a $500 price tag to protect somebody's profit. You were right. You were right the whole time. So here's what I want from you. Go tee one up high this weekend, clip it on the way up, and come back and tell me how many yards you found. Just drop a number in the comments. Tell me the distance you gained from the high tee, because I want to see if you beat my 23 yards. And tell me where you're playing from, because I read every one of these. If you're the sort who's tired of being upsold and wants the buried, proven, money-saving knowledge that earlier generations quietly used and the marketing made us forget, then come with me. I'm doing this with every corner of everyday life, not just golf. Because my next investigation is into the golf ball itself, and I found something even stranger. There's a reason the ball you're playing might be costing you more distance than any driver ever could, and it traces back to a rule change almost nobody noticed. I measured it. It's worse than the driver story. But that's the next piece of the case, and I'll have it for you soon. Now go find those 20 yards. They were yours all along. And before you go, let me leave you with one last thing I found, because it's been nagging at me since I first read that 1968 study. Those same scientists measured something about the grip pressure in your hands. They found that most amateurs squeeze the club far too tight, and a tight grip slows the release of the club head right at impact, killing free speed you already have. They recommended holding the club with the lightest pressure that still keeps control, somewhere around a 4 or 5 out of 10 if you imagine a scale of squeezing. I tested this on the same range days, and it surprised me as much as the high tee did. When I loosened my grip, my hands and the club head released faster through the ball, and I picked up another 2 to 3 miles per hour of club head speed. That's another 5 to 7 yards from simply not choking the life out of the handle. So add that to your Saturday list. Loft up with the wrench. Grip down an inch. Tee it high, and hold it soft. 4 free changes. All of them proven in a book older than most of the drivers on that wall, none of them costing you a single dollar. I chased this question for the better part of a year, and the answer turned out to be simpler and older and cheaper than anything a salesman ever told me. That's the pattern I keep finding in golf and everywhere else. The real answer was written down long ago, quietly buried, and waiting for someone stubborn enough to dig it back up. Now it's yours. Go find those yards. They were always yours. Before you go, one thing. This video made the case, but inside the old ways circle, I hand you the deeper work this only pointed at. And if something puzzles you, you ask me directly, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing this alone. Thousands of old ways folks like you are already in there. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel any time with one click. Now that you know which driver adds real distance, let's sort out your irons. I looked at 12 brands, and only 3 are truly worth your money. That one's starting right here.